Hello everyone, in this session we will learn how to create and push an image to Azure Container Registry and then deploy the image from Azure Container Registry to Azure App Service using Azure CLI. We will need to have basic knowledge of Docker and Dockerfile, which we will discuss when we are working on the steps for implementation. For this session, you will need to have the following prerequisites in place: Azure subscription, Azure CLI, Git and Docker. Let's have a look at the steps we are going to follow to host a web application using image from Azure Container Registry. First, we will clone an application containing a Docker file, and we'll have a look at the Docker file to understand the basics of Docker and Dockerfile. Now we will create a resource group in a specific location. Once we have the resource group, we will create an Azure Container Registry in the resource group for holding the application image. Then we will log into the Azure Container Registry using the Docker client. Now we will build a Docker image and tag it using Azure Container Registry login server name, image name, and tag. Once the image is built, we will push it to the Azure Container Registry. Once we have the image in Azure Container Registry, we will create the components required for hosting the application. First, we will create an app service plan for deploying containers. Then we will create a web application which will use image from Azure Container Registry. Once the web application is ready, we will give it permission to pull image from Azure Container Registry. Now we will configure web application container with details of the image that needs to be pulled. Then we will set the port in which container will be listening for requests. Finally, we will check whether the application has deployed successfully or not. In the screen, you can see the list of steps that needs to be implemented. Let's execute the steps one by one. Let's clone a project which has a Docker file. I'm using one of the projects from Azure Samples. Let's define a variable for Git URL. Just copy and paste Git URL here. Okay, command for cloning a Git repository is as follows: git clone Git URL. Before having a look at the Docker file, let's have a basic understanding of how Docker works. Docker uses a client-server architecture. Docker client talks to the Docker daemon, which builds, runs, pushes, and pulls images from the image registries. Docker client and daemon communicate using a REST API. Now let's have a look at the Docker file of the project and try to understand how it works. On the screen, you can see the Docker file, which contains instructions for building an image. When a line of instruction is executed, a new layer is created on top of the image and changes are made in this layer. The resulting image, which is a combination of the previous image and the changes done in the layer, is committed. Next instruction will use this intermediate image as the base image and repeat the steps we discussed earlier. Let us go through the instructions one by one in the Docker file. Note that after execution of every line of instruction, an intermediate image is created and committed, which is used by the next line of instruction. Instruction on first line is the from instruction, which initializes a new build stage and sets the base image on top of which subsequent instructions will be executed. After the from instruction is the run instruction, which will execute a command in a new layer on top of the current image. After run, we have the work dir instruction, which will set the working directory in the image where any subsequent run, cmd, copy, add, or entry point instruction in the Docker file will be executed. For work dir, we have the add instruction used for copying files, directories from local file system, URLs, and tar files to destination path in the image. Next is the env instruction, which is used for setting environment variables. These variables will be available for all subsequent instructions in the build stage. After env, we have the run command, which we have already discussed. Note that aput-get commands can be combined in the same run statement. Complex run statements should be split into multiple lines using backslashes to make the Docker file more readable, understandable, and maintainable. Next instruction is the copy instruction, which is used for copying files and directories from the source to the destination path in the image. Destination path is absolute if it starts with / and relative to work dir otherwise. Copy and add instructions are similar, but the add instruction supports URLs and tar files also for source files. Valid use case for add is when you want to extract a local tar file to a specific path in the Docker image. Better to use copy if you are not using URL and tar files as source. After copy, we have the run instruction, which we have already discussed. Next instruction is the expose instruction, which is used to inform Docker that container will listen on specified network port at runtime. Expose instruction does not actually publish the port, but just functions as documentation. To actually publish the port, we will use the -p flag in the Docker run command. At last, we have the entry point instruction, which configures a container that will run as an executable. In the entry point instruction that you see, it will execute init.sh command. Now that we have basic understanding of Docker and Dockerfile, let's create the various Azure components. Let's create a resource group first. For creating a resource group, we will need a resource group name and a location. Let's define variable for that. Source group name all technology location TOS. Command for creating the resource group is as follows: azure group create. Use -g parameter to enter the resource group name. Then we'll use the -l parameter to enter the location. And then we'll use -o parameter to define the format of the command execution output. Once we have the resource group, let's create an Azure Container Registry in that. For creating an Azure Container Registry, we will need a name for the registry. Let's define a variable for that. Here name equal to all ACR. Command for creating an Azure Container Registry is as follows: ACR 8. Then we'll use -g parameter again to enter the resource group name. Then we'll use the -n parameter for entering the Azure Container Registry name. Then we'll use the -skew parameter to find the tier. And then we'll use the admin enabled parameter to indicate that admin user is enabled. Then we'll use the O parameter again to define the format of the command execution output. Now let's log into the container registry using the Docker client. For this, we will need Azure Container Registry username, password, and the login server name. Command to get the Azure Container Registry username will be as follows: ACR name equal to $ACR credential row. A parameter to enter the resource group name. We'll use the N parameter to enter the Azure Container Registry name. We'll use the query parameter to enter the data that we are looking for. Then we'll use the O parameter to enter the format in which we would like to see the output of the command execution, which is TSV in our case. Command to get Azure Container Registry password is as follows: ACR password equal to ACR credential row. Again, J parameter to enter the resource group name. Use the N parameter to enter the ACR name. Then we'll use query parameter to define the data that we are looking for. Passwords of 0.value. And then we'll use the O parameter with value as TSV. Now let's define a variable for the login server name. Login server name equal to $ACR name .azure.cr.io, where ACR name is the name of the Azure Container Registry we have created. Now the command to log into your Docker client will be as follows. Docker login. Use parameter to enter the username. Then you use the p parameter to enter the password. And they will enter the login server name. Let's create a Docker image using the docker build command and tag it. For building a Docker image, we will need an image name and a tag. Let's define variables for that. Image name equal to all tech image tag equal to p1. Let's define a variable with image name and tag combined. Image name with tag equal to dollar image name dollar image tag. Now let's combine it with the Azure Container Registry login server name. So server name with image name and tag will be equal to dollar login server name slash dollar image name with tag. Now the docker build command will be as follows. Docker build -t dollar dot. Now that we have the Docker image, let's push it to the Azure Container Registry. Command for pushing the image to Azure Container Registry will be as follows. Docker push. So this will push the image to the Azure Container Registry.